Probably get started now. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another ECO meeting. This is a special meeting this time. This time we are actually convening to discuss the 26, right? Recommendations. Recommendations for 2025, not for 26. Okay, I'm sorry, 2025 recommendations. So I guess the way I would like to start off is first, Jared, if you don't mind kind of just giving a broad overview on the process of the recommendations and some of the guidelines. I know we kind of discussed this a little bit at our last meeting, but again, just for those who are here who may not be familiar or may have forgotten what we're trying to do with the recommendations, basically, and how that process works.
Certainly. I'll share my screen and show some slides from a commission meeting a few months ago where we talked about what this process will look like. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, before I start on this process, I just want to iterate, my apologies to everybody that was trying to access materials on the commission website. Unfortunately, there was an IT breach with some of the software that we used, so we don't currently have edit access. IT is working on that, so stay tuned, and those materials will be posted as soon as that issue has been resolved. So thanks for bearing with us in the meantime. And on to the recommendation process. So, we tried this year to make the process a little more streamlined and offer a little more guidance so that we can spend more time deliberating recommendations and less time working on the wordsmithing and making them seem like they're all similar to each other. Do that at the start to save some time. So each working group of the commission, and a reminder now that as of the last commission meeting, there will only be 4 working groups submitting recommendations this year, including ECO. And each of those working groups is limited to 4 recommendations, and those recommendations are submitted via a Google form, which I have linked in this presentation, and also has been sent out to commissioners previously and will be sent out again as a reminder in the coming days ahead of the September 1st submission date for these recommendations. Only 1 Google form will be submitted, so your chairs will be submitting your Google form on your behalf, and this form will include demographic information like who was submitting it and what the text is for those recommendations, in addition to some of the additional context that wouldn't necessarily be included in the recommendation in the annual report, but that will give greater context to the commission itself when considering those recommendations. And whereas in previous years we've had kind of a fluctuation in what those recommendations might look like, there wasn't always a consistency. I think this year we're trying to limit the length of recommendations, ideally to 2 to 3 sentences, although I recognize that's a challenge, with the idea that we're trying to offer, as concise of a recommendation as possible, and to not get bogged down that sometimes lead to us needing additional time for deliberation. In those recommendations, we want to make sure that we're taking care of those things that take up time during the final meetings, such as fully spelling out acronyms at first, as opposed to having that be an amendment later on in the commission meeting, and clearly stating who is going to be taking the action and the form of the action and the timeline for that action. And I know this for ECO in particular, this has been a question on whether or not to include funding estimates. The conclusion that the commission came to is that there is not an expectation to include cost estimates for your recommendations. But if you do have any sort of discussion around the budgetary context, we would like to have some sort of support for that versus just coming up with a number based on what we might think, but not necessarily have any evidence for. And that's really what the recommendation process for this year is going to look like. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Jared. I do have a few questions, actually, because I don't even remember. So for those of you that may not be aware, there's still 8 working groups. Why was it decided that 4 working groups are only submitting? I don't remember, honestly.
Okay, so some background on that. So at the previous commission meeting that we had a few weeks ago, the secretary announced that the 4 working groups created by the Climate Solutions Now Act, and that includes the Just Transition Working Group, the Energy Resilience and Efficiency Working Group, the Energy Industry Revitalization Working Group, and the Solar Photovoltaic Reuse and Recovery Working Group. Those 4 have submitted their statutory requirements in the form of the studies that CESNA directed them to submit. and they have been put on pause is the term that the secretary used. So they still exist. There's still staff who maintain that membership. However, they will not be submitting recommendations this year, and they will not be meeting unless convened by the commission for a specific purpose.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. So then the other question would be, I know we're limited to 4 recommendations, but is it encouraged that we use all 4? For instance, I mean, we could do 2 or 3, I'm assuming, or is it?
This is the idea of the ceiling of 4 is meant so that, you know, we aren't overburdened in recommendations when it comes time for that commission process for deliberation. So if ECO only has, you know, less than 4, that's perfectly okay. We just don't want to have more than that.
Right. Okay. All right. Were there any other questions thus far about the recommendations for what's expected of us for this year?
Jared, did you make a note that the recommendations from previous years we've passed out, and those apparently are still standing, although a lot of them are probably not appropriate anymore?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. So that's one thing I haven't explained yet, and that is correct. Recommendations from previous annual reports are considered to be standing recommendations, and that means that if we are going to issue a new recommendation this year, that it wouldn't necessarily be an exact copy of one that we have already issued. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a recommendation that's similar. It just can't be the same. So if you have an update, for example, to an existing recommendation to improve it in some way, that is an acceptable contribution.
Okay. All right, great. Tristan, you have a question?
I do. It's about a past recommendation. So I'm on my phone. I can't look at the slides. So I can hold it till later unless you guys want me to go now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go
So
for
I
it.
was looking through the past recommendations and I noticed, I don't think I realized this at this time, but we've submitted quite a few recommendations on like a public awareness program or getting out more messaging and things like that. Is that happening? And I'm just not aware of it, or is it still like a TBD? Like, what's actually the process of implementing these things?
Yeah, so that's a good question about as far as implementation. I will say, and that was one thing I was going to mention, Tristan, so thank you for bringing that up to the group, that when looking back at some of the past recommendations, there are certain themes that I've seen. And I looked at 21, 22, 23, and 24. And the 2 primary recommendations that I've seen mentioned more than once is the environmental literacy and climate change, education, which is very important. And that is a hallmark of what we're doing with this work group. And then the second one is public awareness campaign. And I think one was particularly emphasizing an interactive website and whatnot. But I did notice both of those were like almost the 2 themes that we've had in ECO over the past several years. So with that in mind, I think we probably could continue to stick with those 2 things because, to your point, Tristan, climate education we're getting there. We're moving the needle on that. As far as a public awareness campaign, I don't think we've really gotten that far on that. And it could be a complex situation. So, does anybody here have any insight on the implementation aspect of the recommendations?
It was my understanding from the get-go that they are just recommendations, so that doesn't mean they're going to be implemented. They're for consideration, and sometimes it depends on who's the intended or the targeted agency or implementer as well.
Okay. Yeah, Jennifer?
For things to be implemented, people would have to take our recommendations and truly champion them. And so either an agency would have to take it on within their existing budget, or a legislator would have to work really hard to pass it. And we'd need someone on the House, someone on the Senate. We'd need the governor to be involved. And unfortunately, our very important priorities have not passed. And in fact, legislation hasn't even been drafted on some of it. So this is very disappointing. And so I do think, Jabari, that your suggestion of keeping those 2 themes that were so important in previous years should be things that we continue with.
Okay. Thank you. And actually, I really do want to discuss the recommendation that you put forward, Jennifer. Before we get to that, and Amy, I'm not gonna call you too much. I know you have a lot of things going on your side, but would you want to quickly just kind of give a synopsis on last year's recommendations? Because I think that will kind of help tie us into what we're going to do for this year.
Yeah, so we had 3 recommendations last year. One was a public outreach campaign. One was the climate teach-in, making, resubmitting that as legislation. I can't think of what the third one was off the top of my head.
I'm going to share my screen in a moment.
Oh, thanks. And then there was a lot. So our 3 recommendations were the first 3 recommendations that came before the commission. So there was a ton of discussion on them. It seems like the later you get brought up, the less discussion it is because there's kind of like a time crunch, but there was a ton of discussion on our recommendations, very much nitpicking into the very specific language word choice, and whether or not to include a budget. I'm really struggling to see that even at that time. Yeah, and in doing that's right. And we were talking about climate literacy. That's right. We were suggesting that they, basically it was schools. We were going after schools. Then we did the climate education week, and we did the outreach campaign. We've done the outreach campaign for 3 years now,
Right.
and it's never been picked up even a little.
Mhm.
So I just want to point that out.
Yep. No, that's good to point out, actually, because that kind of brings us to discussion. I mean, I guess this Jennifer is saying we should continue to put this out there. So I guess that's one thing that we have to consider. I do feel that the guidelines for this year may limit us a little bit, since they're only hoping that we only have 2 or 3 sentences. Now, I did see back in 2021, that's what the recommendations were. If you all, I don't know if you all had a chance to actually go back and look at some of the past recommendations, but from 2021, we had 5 different recommendations, and they all were about 2 or 3 sentences. So we could go that route, and I'm guessing the hope is that we'll discuss that in the commission meetings. We'll discuss the recommendations in more, in more detail when we're actually in discussion. But we are going to have to try to see what we can fit in a short period of, short scope of how we word it, basically. So we're going to try to keep these things very short. So that's to me could be a little bit of a limitation, but we'll have to be pretty creative on that one. I think James' hand came up first. Was anybody? I think just James. Yeah, James.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and forgive me if I missed this. I had a call that I had to take, but do we get feedback annually on the recommendations that we make, or is there some, either request or requirement, process by which we could ask for feedback on what we submit?
So as far as I know, we only get feedback during the actual meetings, and I think Jared, you're going to give a little bit more about that. As far as when we put the recommendation, the annual report together, I'm guessing you're asking, do we get like a follow-up from the recommendation set forward in the annual report? Is that basically what you're asking?
Right. Or if there's some, you could have done, you could have worded this in a way that would have made it more, palatable, or just some feedback that would have given us some clues as to where to go the next round.
So I will say those things are discussed ahead of time before the actual annual report is put out. So after the report is put out, that part, not really sure where things happen after that point. Jared, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that you kind of already said what I was going to say, in that the feedback comes in the deliberation of the recommendations during the commission process. So it's not like it's provided in a document here. That's an ongoing discussion during those meetings. And I think you could also interpret some of the guidance in how we designed this year's Google form as feedback as well. We struggled last year with the length of recommendations and how much time we spent on semantics as opposed to the real core content of the recommendations. So, But read between the lines, I suppose.
Well, here's the thought.
Thank you. Thank you.
This may be a crazy thought, and I mean, and we can talk a little bit more about it later. So you all think, just let me know if this sounds completely crazy or way out there. Maybe part of one of the recommendations that we could provide is to somehow, we can't require or mandate anything, but encourage either report or follow up to each of the recommendations put forward at a certain point of the year or something like that. And I don't know if that's something we are, Jared. I mean, yeah. Please,
Yeah, so
please
sorry to
chime
keep
in on
jumping in
this.
here. So I just want to make everyone aware of the audience for these recommendations. So the commission is not the audience for the commission's recommendations. The recommendations that we put forward are intended for two audiences: the governor's office and the agencies, you know, under him, and then also the General Assembly. You know, these are the audience for these recommendations. So when we're considering what we want to put forward, you know, having ideas in terms of commission process is certainly something that we can consider. And, you know, I can bring that back to our planning meetings, but that would not be a recommendation per se.
Okay, gotcha. Does anybody else have their hand up? Okay. So let's do this, Dan. Since Jennifer, you're here and you had a incredible recommendation. You went to detail on that, and I think that was great. Hopefully, some of you in the group were able to have a chance to kind of look over that. But I think that could provide a good blueprint for what we may want to look at for this year's recommendations. So, Jennifer, if you don't mind, would you want to kind of go over what you submitted?
Absolutely, Jabari. So first of all, I'd like to explain the genesis of why I believe this is a very important recommendation.
Hey, can I put you on hold just 1 second, Jennifer? Jared, are we able to show anything on the screen while she's talking? Okay.
Pulling that up right now.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, Jennifer, sorry about that.
So there was a real challenge during the session last year that the climate community put forth a number of recommendations, and there was legislation that corresponded with a lot that the Maryland Climate Commission recommended. Specifically, for example, there was some work on data centers, doing a study, and also the Renew Act, which would make polluters pay for the damages that they caused. So all through the session, people were saying, we think this is fine, we think this is fine, out of the governor's office. And the entire climate community was sort of led to believe that the governor was looking forward to signing the Renew Act, for example. And literally, you know, right before the signing ceremony, the governor told people he was vetoing it. And so there was a lot of distrust, to be quite honest, between the governor's office and a lot of people in the climate community. And there's a sense that there's not enough participation and listening to what the stakeholders and the experts in the field feel need to be done, and that there needs to be a lot more trust. And so that's why I put this forward. Was it's just important to have real partnership, and also that because the federal government has eviscerated the money for solving climate problems, and indeed just yesterday we were told as a state that the FEMA will not give us money for the flooding in Western Maryland, that really we have to have a lot more public-private partnership, because we need to have other organizations, whether it's faith-based organizations or companies or private citizens, you know, take this stuff on its own. So I put forth a very long proposal, but given that they want 2 sentences, I condensed that in the chat, and I just put in the chat: Maryland must enhance public trust and accelerate climate action by convening diverse stakeholders and investing in community education, inclusive climate-focused events, showing cost effectiveness of various actions, and cross-sector partnerships. By engaging residents, nonprofits, businesses as true collaborators, the state can lead in transparent, participatory climate solutions. So I'm definitely open to other text. I think I made it clear that the idea is more partnership and more trust.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. Feedback from you all or questions, please. So what do you all think about that as being a recommendation? Amy, I think if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry. In the form, don't we have to indicate who exactly we're directing this to? I can't remember.
No,
I can't remember the form.
that's
I'm
true.
sorry.
In
But
fact, it
I
might
just
be
want to know,
useful
like, who
to
are
share
we
the
telling
form.
to do this?
Well, it's really the Maryland administration. It's you know, the government, the governor and the agencies.
Okay.
Then yeah, let's add that text then.
Any other comments or questions? I mean, I think you summed it up great, Jennifer. I'm in full agreement of it. And I do think that it's very important that for us to be able to reach out and collaborate with some of these nonprofits and other community entities. So that would make this much more impactful. Or the work that we're trying to do with it, rather. Yes, Laura. Oh, you're on mute, Laura.
Thank you. I like the recommendation. I also think we need to make sure that it is worded, and I'm not sure it does, but there is already some work that is being done by organizations, nonprofits who are working with K-12 programming around environmental education and climate literacy. So I think it would be good to acknowledge that, not to diminish the impact of being able to expand the work, right?
Maybe where it says residents, nonprofits, businesses, we could add comma, scientists, experts, environmental organizations, experts, environmental organizations, and others as true collaborators.
Yeah, then it would expand it for sure. And can you just define true collaborator?
Or could we just take out the word true?
Well, I want to be sure that I meant full partner. True collaborator is more than just lip service. There is a sense of lip service being offered.
I understand that. I think that I would just go ahead and say something more specific than true.
Do you have any suggestions?
No, I'm sorry. I'll think about it, Jennifer. I'm sorry.
What about the word active?
Engaged, active.
I like
Yeah.
either one of those.
I think that's the problem is a lot of people, when they give lip service, it's because they're passive. They're just standing back there. So.
Do we like active or engaged better?
Well, I like active, I think.
I also, if we can really hit the thesaurus hard, find a word that also represents that they're part of the process the whole time. It's not just like, oh, hey, we created this thing. What do you think after the fact?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a very important point. Would you suggest we do that?
Yeah, Astrid?
Yeah, what was just said and Jennifer agreed. I think it's oftentimes we do things and we kind of come up with decisions and then we consult with people. Do you like this? Do you think that this is a good idea? As opposed to what we're talking right now, that people get engaged and an active collaborator from the start so that it's not just consulting. Thanks.
So then I'm wondering, is there a way we can implement being active in the planning process? Somehow we can, is there a way to somehow interweave that into what we're saying? So that, as you're saying, all stakeholders are part of the entire process from beginning to end, from the planning part to the actual implementation part. I think we should think about that. So James, yes, you have a question?
How about if we said as active collaborators in every phase of the outreach development, or something along those lines that would modify their active collaboration in every phase of development and execution, or something like that.
I like that idea. Actually, I think we're doing a pretty good job thus far of making this all, comprehensive in such a short paragraph.
Yeah, we had a start on this one.
Yeah.
So we're very grateful. I think anything else we're starting on from scratch-ish.
Agreed. So thank you, Jennifer, for helping us get started on this one. This has been a big help.
Well, you've all made it much better.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add thus far to this?
I have a question. So do you think that the governor or someone in their office that's reading this is going to say, well, they just don't understand, like Maryland Department of Environment is doing tremendous work in climate, to mitigate whatever climate industry, improve air quality, water quality, whatever. Do you think that we need to, I know that it talks about community education. Do you think that we need to reinforce that this is, really kind of strengthen that community aspect of it, to differentiate it or to complement the larger industry types of impacts that are happening?
Jennifer, this is your recommendation. What do you think?
I think they'll understand what we're trying to say here. I hope they will. I do have a sense that people in state government have felt that they need to make all the decisions and just tell us. And really, we have a lot of ideas and we're ready to do some work.
Yeah, I agree. Jennifer, I've also heard, like with the Maryland Green Schools program that I work with, if you get all of the children to turn off lights or recycle, you're not making a big dent in the climate points in the climate action plan. And then I kind of respond back, this is about community engagement. This is about having people in Maryland understand that actually their actions do have a local impact, and that local impact can then have a greater statewide impact. It's still not going to be to the level where if you have the right scrubbers on a stack, you're going to reduce greenhouse emissions by a huge quantifiable bit. I'm just using that as an example, but you are going to have a population that has a better understanding of what the local issues are, of what their community issues are, and how they can have a positive impact on the environment. So I'm just saying that's kind of pushback I've gotten, and I just kind of push back and deal with it and say, I think that behavior change and community knowledge and engagement is, as you're saying, as we are saying here, really important. But I do think there are skeptics. Anyway.
Laura, I'm trying to figure out how we could enhance the text to reflect your important comments. One idea I have is in the very first sentence. And Jared, if you look at the first sentence, it says the Maryland governor and executive agencies must, if you were to put in the words, see and treat stakeholders as full partners.
Sorry, starting where?
So right after the
Where the cursor is.
I'm sorry, I heard Laura
after
and
the
Jennifer
word-
at the same time. I'm sorry.
right where your cursor is, see stakeholders as full partners and.
Yeah, I like that, Jennifer.
It's a bit of a run-on sentence.
That's what I was thinking. I was wondering, is there a way to break this up? And I'm just trying to figure out how to do that because it is a long sentence. Hmm.
And I can note that
Yeah.
for things like this where it's really just about reorganizing the text, if it's
Mhm.
better to spend this time on additional recommendations, I can take some time to reformat this and reshare for approval in between the meetings.
Yeah, I think
And
that's probably
I'm
best.
happy to help you with that.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So, and if we need to go back to this, we can. But to Jared's point, I think we probably should just go ahead and look at some other possible recommendations as well. And again, if we're going back to the themes that we set forth in our work group, which are strong themes that we hold true and dear to our mission of ECO, it would be the public awareness campaign, which this is tied into that, I believe, and then also the actual education part. So I know one of the recommendations we've actually had the last 2 years, I want to say 2023, we had a recommendation to declare, to have a declaration, of Climate Education Week in Maryland. Last year, it was more so to pass the legislation, which we know never happened. So do we want to put that in a recommendation as a new recommendation, since that was not passed last year?
I think the only thing, I mean, we'd have to change it to get it in as a recommendation. I mean,
Mhm.
the change that we discussed with Delegate Stein was that one that we changed it to Climate Education Month.
Yeah.
Because in the legislature 2 years ago, they argued about the week that it was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
killing me. So that was one thing. And then, yeah, and we need a senator.
Which I think Delegate Stein said he was working on, so we might have to follow up with him too to see if he's made any progress.
Okay.
But yes, we do. We do need that senator to kind of really push this through. So my opinion, Jared, and I do, somebody had their hand up, I believe, but is we could almost, I don't want to say cut and paste, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing, but it will be similar language to what we had last year, except we will be more so changing it from week to month. And actually, I think changing it from Climate Education Week to Climate Education Month will be less pressure, because no one would feel forced to have to try to think of something or plan something within a defined week of the entire month of April. And then, of course, the other factor was there are other things going on throughout the month of April. Different school systems have different spring breaks. So expanding it to a month, in my opinion, actually makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We could also talk about the fact that we proclaimed it 2 years in a row, and that the teach-in has grown from, a
20
very
something.
small Central Maryland focused event to a statewide. I mean, it's become something that people look forward to and recognize.
Yes. Good points. I think that we should definitely include that.
I think somewhere in there, we should include that you guys have built some wonderful resources for that Climate Week. And we should mention that those are available online, because they really are quite terrific.
Thank you for that. And I have to give some a lot of credit to Amy as well for getting those resources over the years. It's been a task, but yeah, appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have so much information now for teachers and it just keeps growing. Next year, we have so many ideas for them from what we collected this year.
Yeah.
Do we have proposed language changes? So I copied and pasted last year's recommendation. So it's a good starting point.
How about this declaration would provide, you see in the fourth line, free online resources and a unique opportunity. And instead of unique, I would call it special. Or, yeah.
Well, and I think we should proclaim Climate Education Month. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. So, and take out though, this bill would proclaim 1 week. This bill would proclaim the month of April.
Yeah. Now, did Delegate Stein, this may be small, but did he say it would still be the same House bill? Or would be a new
I don't
legislation?
think so. I think he has to reintroduce it entirely.
Yes.
Okay. So just keep that up there.
We'll
then.
get another number and everything.
Right.
In fact, Jared, that first sentence you need to change because it says Climate Education Week in 2024. Do you need to put the year?
No,
Well-
because the
No.
governor didn't proclaim Climate Education Month.
Right.
You want it just to be what?
Well, it was week. We have the week proclaimed.
On the
That's
sixth.
right word.
Oh,
No,
I'm
it's fine.
sorry. You're
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
And I think we should also include, to Amy's point, 2024 as well. Was it just, 24 and 25, correct? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay. I'm reading it. Looks good to me. Any other feedback, any questions, comments? Okay, so then other recommendations. I mean, we have 2 already. So that's great. Now again, this kind of goes
Do we
back
have
to
a
the
proposed title? Sorry to interrupt. Do we
Oh,
have a
sure.
proposed title for the previous recommendation that Jennifer submitted?
Building partnership and trust.
Thank you.
So, okay, question, and Jennifer, maybe you can chime in on this. Do you think it's feasible to break up that recommendation to 2? One concentrating on the partnership aspect, and another one concentrating on the trust and transparency part. I mean, I know it ties in together, but what do you all think about that?
I don't think you can do one without the other.
So what I was looking at was more so having the stakeholders, talking about the full partners, being active and investing in the community, which I do understand your point, absolutely. But then also a different recommendation could be
Oh, I
for
see
more
what you mean.
transparency.
My
Yeah.
apologies. I
it's
understand what you're saying.
No problem, no problem. But I would like to hear what other people think about maybe making those the 2 separate recommendations. Tristan, I see you. Is your hand raised?
Yeah,
Yes,
it is.
it
Thank you.
is.
I was wondering if we were still considering a redo of the public outreach. Like, my brain just lost the words.
Yeah, public awareness. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
The
No
public awareness campaign. That's what I was looking for. If we're still thinking we want to submit that as a re-recommendation to keep it, keep pushing it along, then that would be our 3.
That's a thought as well.
So if we even want to consider the public announcement one, I mean, we'd have to make major changes, and I'm going to be honest, they haven't done them.
Yeah, I mean, that's seriously though. I mean, we recommended this like 3 years, 4 years actually in a row, I believe, to some different, variation.
And I mean, don't see them dedicating any money to it. I mean, if we do that at all, I think that recommendation changes so that the departments under, so that the governor would direct the, state government departments to incorporate climate change messaging into their department's existing advertising campaigns, because they're not going to spend any more money on this. They're just not. I mean, if they're going to spend money on it, they're going to spend money on something very specific. I just don't think, I think realistically, I don't think that's going to happen this or next year because of all the funding limitations we're facing. Unless they can find a partner that's willing to give them free ad space, which maybe they could, but I don't know. That's just my thought. I mean, we could leave it as is and just leave it as an existing recommendation.
Or we can add it to a recommendation that's already so full as it is. But we're talking about partnerships and leveraging community partners and nonprofits and whatnot. I mean, maybe we can put the public awareness campaign as a part of that. Therefore, we're not talking about using state resources. We're talking about using those resources from those nonprofits or other businesses. Again, we're adding a lot to an already, full recommendation. But again, if we split that up, then we could do it that way. So is that, what do y'all think? Yes, we should maybe go that route. So let's see, can we look back at I guess you have it up there, Jared. There's no point scrolling down really. I think the building partnership and trust, I like all of this, but I think maybe we concentrate on the partnership part for this one recommendation, and we add this section about public awareness, and then we'll make a separate one for the trust and the transparency part. Is that okay, or do y'all want to just keep this one? I mean, I'm good either way, but I'm just just trying to throw it out there to see what you all think.
My initial vote would be to leave it as is, because I think it's a different message than what we've been sending, which is a good one.
Okay.
And not watering it down. That's my initial thought.
Okay. What do you think we should add the public awareness aspect to this as well?
Well, I mean, we have community education, that's what that is. But we could, just add public awareness into the list.
Okay.
But
I think public awareness and community education, and we talk about engaging residents, nonprofits, but the part about community education and engaging residents is what we're talking about. So if you want to add a sentence or add something within this recommendation, it might be okay. And I think it would reinforce our public awareness concern included in this partnership and trust, in a different language, but it would highlight our concern with that public awareness, thing.
Okay. Kristen?
Sorry, are we adding the public awareness aspects to the Climate Education Month announcement? I'm wondering if we're recommending that we declare Climate Education Month, wherein we will share resources, educators will teach about climate, there are public awareness campaigns happening, and that's all wrapped up in that.
I mean, to your point, that is a form, in a way, of public awareness. I mean, education obviously that's pretty much what that is. You're educating the residents and citizens. So I think it's a stretch though I feel like when we talk about the public awareness, and we've always talked about like some sort of campaign, I prefer to put in the other recommendation, but I mean, I guess it could really go in either or. Let's see. what if Jared's just really just at just inserting a word in the second recommendation, first sentence, which I know we already said we're going to reformat that sentence later because it is a run-on. It's pretty long, but full partners and enhance public awareness and trust, and accelerate. Like I said, we'll probably have to reformat the actual sentence, but we're kind of putting it in there. It's broad, but we're mentioning it.
I mean, I don't hate the idea from a public awareness aspect of directing the departments to, you know, incorporate climate messaging into their, you know, for public awareness into their already, you know, public facing channels, whether it's advertising, their websites, things like that. But I think a lot of them already have. It's just not unified.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get unified without some money, because we need somebody to come up with something amazing.
This is true.
So,
Okay, Tristan, then Jennifer.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
Okay, Jennifer.
I just want to remind we can have 4 recommendations, so I don't think we should shortchange ourselves by trying to have fewer, given that we can have up to 4. I do like the idea of asking the agencies to, you know, have to intentionally put out climate messages, especially because there's a sub-cabinet on climate, and maybe we could ask the sub-cabinet on climate, which Megan staffs, to help support them in that effort.
that's a great idea, because now we're not directing the agencies to do it themselves. We are directing someone that can be held accountable. I love that.
When was the sub-cabinet formed, if you all don't mind me asking?
It was
Last year.
last year by executive order. There's a sub-cabinet on climate, and every agency was asked to create a climate plan for their agency and to report out on what their plan was.
Okay.
Megan Conklin staffs it.
Is
That's right.
this something we should we target it towards the sub-cabinet, or should we target it towards the governor to release an executive order telling them to do it, which makes it happen? But I don't know.
I like that idea, and actually, it's kind of an easy thing on the governor's office. Just issue the executive order. But it will be a recommendation. I mean, again, that's what we're doing. We're recommending to the governor. Can you send an executive order out to that agency, well, sub-cabinet, to handle it?
Yeah, amending their responsibilities to.
I'm sorry, it's not part of the building trust section. This is a whole separate.
Yeah, this is a whole.
Yeah.
This would be its own thing.
the
This
whole
is a new recommendation, Jared.
new recommendation.
This might be the first recommendation I'm aware of where we actually sent something asking the governor to send it to issue an executive order.
Well, they're making us be very, very, very like brief. So we're just
Yep.
gonna have to be darn specific.
Absolutely, I like it.
Do we have more proposed language?
It's a sub-cabinet on climate. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to let's see. I'm noodling on this in my brain. This is probably not gonna come out well. To work with state agencies to incorporate climate awareness and messaging into their existing public facing communications, such as advertising, their website, social media.
And what about Amy? Since you said that, or one of you said that
Or
all the
website.
agencies.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, no problem. I mean, all of the agencies have a climate plan, or climate action plan, correct?
Yes, correct.
Have they already, I guess, issued those, or
Yeah.
put them out? So,
They're,
okay.
they're on the commission
know what?
webpage.
You know what, Jabari? It's a good question because the executive order asked them to make a plan, but it didn't ask them to make a new plan. And the world has changed since Trump came in. So maybe the governor should issue an executive order to ask the governor's sub-cabinet on climate to update their plans annually.
Yeah, I don't know if that falls to us though. I feel like that should fall to one of the other groups, don't you? That's a great recommendation.
Well, to update and share their
Yeah.
plans annually. That makes it under our jurisdiction.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Communications.
They didn't share their plan. And then they don't need to work with the agencies because they are the agencies. So the governor should issue an executive order to the governor's subcabinet on climate to update their plans and update and share their plans annually and incorporate climate messaging into their existing public-facing communications such as advertising, websites, and social media.
Yeah, and do we want to actually just even specifically that they need to communicate their progress,
Yes.
their actions, their
Yeah.
plans and their actions?
I mean, that's normally when I know when I'm expected to do a climate action plan, which I have to do every few years, we are expected to report on the outcomes and results.
Okay.
At some point.
Okay, so the governor should issue an executive order to the governor's subcabinet on climate for agencies to report on their progress, comma, annually update and share their climate implementation plans, comma,
Yeah. And I would
and
move-
to, and then incorporate climate awareness.
And I might move the report their progress after the annually update
Yeah. I like
in
that.
the list.
The better order. Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes sense to me.
Well, reporting their progress, I think should be at the end. So to annually
for
update and
both.
share. Hmm.
Ah, you're right, because then they got to report on both of those things.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes. That way, it's
We-
not really any funding tied to this either, really, right?
Right, but we should probably put it into 2 sentences because it's kind of run on. The governor should issue an executive order to the governor's subcabinet on climate for agencies to annually update and share their climate implementation plans and incorporate climate awareness and messaging into their public-facing communications, blah, 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 period. They should report on their progress annually.
Okay.
Do you want to note to whom they're reporting?
Publicly.
Yeah.
But to Jared's question, when they report publicly, what does that really entail? What does that mean? So are they doing it through the sub cabinet, or are they just releasing it themselves, basically? That's just a question. I'm just curious.
They have like a landing page on a website.
Okay.
So Jared, you're implying you don't think it's good enough. So we could have put it on their webpage. Sorry, not on the agency's website, but on the sub-cabinets, on the sub-cabinets climate webpage.
Do they have one?
They do.
Mhm.
I mean, there is a landing page for the reports.
Okay.
Okay. That looks
You
good.
I don't know if it's a page or just a report. I'm trying to see where it is. It's on the MDE website, actually, is where it seems to be sitting.
Yeah. Which is where the commission stuff sits too.
Okay. Oh, we're not
We have a
supposed to
proposed
use
title.
acronyms. Maryland Deposit Department of the Environment.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good catch.
Oh, by the way, I see your comments, Astrid. I think that was just a couple minutes ago. We would need to title this recommendation too. Hmm. Let's see. Climate implementation plan
How about
updates, or
Accountability, transparency.
accountability
I like
in
that.
climate? Yeah.
okay.
Accountability and climate implementation. Or climate action. How about that? Oh, accountability and climate action.
Yes.
How about continuous improvement and accountability? Because the idea of doing a new plan every year is that you're iterating based on what you learned the last time,
Hmm.
or
Right.
if there's a new set of circumstances because the climate had shifted or the federal government changed, or it's about flexibility and, responding, being nimble to respond to the, ongoing circumstances.
Right. I do like using the word climate action rather than climate implementation.
And it almost makes me wonder, like at the beginning of that one, should we acknowledge the level of volatility right now? Which is why we're asking for them to be updated. Like we're giving, like sometimes I feel like we're not coming out of this for no reason. Everything's changed in 6 months. So these can't be stagnant documents.
I totally agree with that point, Amy. I feel like that's one of those things where we would probably need to discuss that aspect instead of putting the recommendation. I mean, we could, but I mean, that's so well, all these things are pretty much changing because of that. So,
Well, I mean, we could just say, in light of the current volatility of climate
And federal policy.
federal climate policy and funding.
or lack of funding.
Well, right, and it's volatile.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I'm one of the folks that we work with is an industry rep, and they were working with something with NOAA. NOAA canceled like part 2 of it. Then there was a lot of publication, and now NOAA has put part 2 back in. So I mean, it's volatile. Some things
Right.
are coming back, and it's very strange.
I would take out the word state because it's federal and state, and I would just use funding.
Yeah.
So just take out federal policy as well. Just take in light of current volatility in funding.
No, it's policy too.
Oh, in policy and funding. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it could be because honestly, the state's kind of volatile right now.
it is.
I mean, because everybody doesn't know what's happening.
Hmm.
But, so maybe take the word federal out.
Yeah.
You could just say policy volatility and funding.
And you
No.
could add as well as ongoing climate catastrophes.
That's deep.
Sorry, Jennifer, where would that go?
In light of current volatility in policy and funding, comma, as well as ongoing climate catastrophes, comma.
Perhaps ongoing and worsening.
Yeah.
Well, it is. So
You could just use worsening instead of ongoing.
point. Mm-hmm.
Or you could say worsening extreme weather.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of those other sentences we may have to go back and restructure. But I think that reads. I mean, overall, we've incorporated a lot, and that's pretty good.
I also just want to note that we do have another meeting before recommendations are due. So this isn't our
Right.
final opportunity to work on these recommendations.
Yeah, I would pose that after we're done today, we type these up and send them to everybody who couldn't be here today. We'll have to do a formal voting like we did last year with a record of that.
Okay. And that vote will take place in the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we have 3 strong recommendations right here thus far. I think that incorporates pretty much everything that we want to include as far as what we do in eco. So I want to ask the people that are remaining, is there anything else you all can think of? Anything we should add to it, modify? You have any other opinions, questions, comments on anything?
I mean, the only question I have is last year we had that really long one about all different kinds of school stuff.
Oh,
And
yes.
do we need to do something with that? Do we let it stand as is? I just wanted to throw it out there as something to consider before, we wrap up for this.
No, that's a good point, Amy. Because we really haven't tackled that in these recommendations. So, and last year, the actual recommendation basically was to develop Maryland's future generation of environmental and climate change leaders.
It was a big one.
It was very long, but it is important, and that is a little different. That not little. That's different than the one we're asking for at Climate Education Month, because those are 2 different. I mean, they're all related to climate education, but they're still 2 different topics. So, yeah, I think maybe that's a big one, but it's an important one. So I think we probably should include that, and we just have to narrow it down and figure out how to put that into a few sentences. And maybe we could we had 3 bullet points from last year. And those 3 bullet points could be just what we mentioned in the actual paragraph, and that was advancing climate literacy, developing climate action plans, which we know the state agencies have to do. So now we're putting on the schools to do as well, and then expanding Maryland Green Schools program. So
Didn't Elliot Stein say he was going to work on climate literacy? And I'm trying to remember what he said.
he did, and yeah, I'm not quite clear on exactly which way he was going to and how, what way he was going to do that either.
Right.
Yeah, I think maybe it deserves us to follow up with him to see what his plan was for that, or his strategy was. So I'm thinking he meant like introducing a new bill, right?
Possibly. I don't know. I thought he was going to talk to he was going to reach out to MSDE.
He did say that. I think he was thinking more so. I'm thinking that might be after the recommendations have to are due, maybe. But
No, we talked about that because he was like, "Should I wait?" And we were like,
oh,
"No,
right,
don't
we
wait."
did. We did say no. Please don't wait. We did. We sure did. We sure did say that. I'll make a note to follow up with Delegate Stein.
Okay.
Laura, do you remember if like along these lines, if there's any specific language in COMAR and the MSDE environmental literacy graduation requirement on climate literacy, because that could be an angle long term that we explore.
Yeah. So I put a couple of comments into the chat. I know that when Delegate Stein was here, we talked about standards as opposed to curriculum, because you will never get any curriculum passed in our legislature, because each school district has autonomy for setting curriculum. But the Maryland State Department of Education sets standards. So there are the COMAR standards around environmental literacy. And within the environmental literacy, I don't have it in front of me, the COMAR, but I believe there is a reference to climate within that.
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't have it here either right in front of me, but could be something for us to take a look at.
Right. Also, I know that the COMAR has to be reviewed every 5 years. At least that's my understanding. And they just did one in 2020 that I think was implemented in 2021 or 22. So it's either, Donald, do you remember if it's 5 or 8 years? But I also don't remember every COMAR going through that process. So I'm not sure if this was like an exceptional thing that they decided after 10 years or whatever that they should do it again.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and it may not be for this go around, but potentially something for down the road. There's some impact that
Right.
could be added at that level, not specific to a particular, curriculum or curricula, but if if it makes its way into that standard and the school agencies have to report every 2 years on the progress, that's something.
Right. The other thing, just in terms of an overarching kind of recommendation around green schools or schools, sorry, and climate, I personally don't mind having a recommendation that has some reference to the work that is going on, but also and including supporting, I put this in the chat, supporting supporting efforts in our schools to support stewardship, because I think that is important. And then, if you really wanted to tie it into a big policy, the blueprint for Maryland, one of the big pillars there, I believe that's the right terminology, is green careers. And so it might be worth having some, within the context of a school's recommendation, or anyway, a school's recommendation, stewardship, and increasing awareness of green job opportunities or something along those lines.
Yeah, and there's the whole apprenticeship piece and increase in the number of students graduating with certifications.
Right.
So if there's, direct recommendations at some point that percentage or additional considerations for environmental and climate-based apprenticeships and certifications could develop into a recommendation.
Good. Okay. Good feedback on y'all. Tristan, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I actually just got out of the Outdoor Learning Partnership College and Green Careers Work Group recommendations meeting before I came to this meeting. So I can give you all a little insight as to what we are thinking there, and some of the things we are tabling for next year, because maybe they're not quite as fleshed out as we need our recommendations to be at OLP. But we are looking at or asking for a recommendation around college and technical education that specifically relates to environmental and green lines of work. And the second one, I am totally blanking on right now. But the two that we kind of tabled for next year, or I should say, the one we are tabling for next year was figuring out a way to really call out like the pre-K through 8th grade band levels and getting them the career awareness. So if we want to, tie that into climate somehow, those would work together well. I don't really see an obvious fit for it at the moment, but if that's something we want to noodle on.
Okay, well, I say let's put something together now, and this might be, we might have to further discuss this recommendation either before the next meeting or at the next meeting. Either way, I think the next meeting I really want to go ahead and just pretty much vote on it, though. Laura, I think you put something in the chat that maybe we could kind of help guide us to this recommendation.
Laura just left.
Okay. Well, basically what she was saying was supporting efforts in our schools to support stewardship. We have to reword that. I know we're saying that we have to mention more so we don't need to mention curriculum, which I don't think we did in our last recommendation either. So let's see. I'm going to read part of our last recommendation, Jared. Recognizing the power of education to create a fundamental understanding. I'm going to change it around a little bit. Of the challenges of climate change. Let's see. Let me ask this. Should we just put the 3 bullet points that we had in our last recommendation and kind of go back and flesh those out? We had advancing climate literacy, developing climate action plans, and expanding the Maryland Green Schools program. I'm not sure if I necessarily want to include that one or not. I think in place of that, we can mention I think Kristen and Laura's point about adding something about green careers, preparedness for green careers.
Yeah, and I don't think we can do the climate action plans. We've learned so much from MSDO over the last couple of years. Like the state they have no way of making them do that. The LEAs are independent agencies.
Okay.
So I mean, as much as I'd love for them to do that, we have no ability to do that.
Right. So then I think it's fair to pretty much discuss advancing climate literacy and green careers preparedness is what I would say. I think those should be our 2 focus points for that recommendation. And that's not, putting out the wording, but those are just the 2 simple aspects of that recommendation. And I know we're getting closer to the time of our meeting, but we can kind of flesh that out a little bit later. Unless anybody has any recommendations to add anything to it now. Advancing green, yeah. So do you want Yeah, Jennifer.
When we finish that one, I want to go back to a different one.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to leave that one on pause for now, and then so maybe let's go back to which one. The
Continuous improvement in accountability and climate action.
okay.
I just want to incorporate a little more interaction again. So in light of current volatility in policy and funding, as well as worsening extreme weather, the governor should issue an executive order to the governor's sub cabinet on climate for agencies to annually seek stakeholder input or comma, update and share their climate up. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay. So what are we looking like, y'all? Are we pretty pleased with these recommendations thus far? I know we need to go back and flesh out the first one, but you know, that's not too much to figure out. Like I said, we already had the blueprint on that from last year's recommendation, in my opinion. But continuous improvement and accountability and climate action. We have the Climate Education Month. We might have changed that title a little bit, and then building partnership and trust. And those will be 4 recommendations from ECO. You all like?
I just want to say I like this process a lot better than previous year's processes, this collaborative process. I really enjoyed these conversations. And I think the resulting recommendations are great.
I agree. This process is easier.
Yeah, and kudos to you as leaders for, starting the process early enough to have this collaboration, because I think in years past it was a bit rushed. So thank you to everybody who made that possible.
Yes. Thank you, Jody. Yeah, Jennifer?
So I just want to say that after we have our recommendations locked, which won't happen for a bit, I think it would be wonderful if this group would convene separately to just brainstorm about the materials for Climate Week and how we can help Amy and Jabari make it even stronger, because I thought it was so good last year that I'd like to support it again, and I'd like to see it get even bigger and stronger. And I just think this group has a lot of great ideas. So I don't know if people are interested, but I think, I'm just really excited about what happened last year.
Well, and I think that the timing of that, while the commission is working through the recommendations in the report, that's a great time for us to work on that, because it's before the teach-in starts picking up speed in the new year. So we have a little downtime to do some things like that. So I think that's a great idea.
Yes.
Amy, when did we start planning the teach-in for this year?
So, we actually start planning in the fall, we start planning in October. We have monthly meetings until January, then they become bi-weekly, then they become weekly.
Mm-hmm.
The real
I feel like as soon as we finished our recommendations, we were like, all right, back into the teach-in.
We kind of did.
Correct.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pretty much.
But Jennifer, to your point of maybe expanding it more, we've done a really great job at reaching out to teachers and schools, but one of the places we haven't really been able to crack into yet are some of those private organizations that you are alluding to, and having the active collaboration. So I'm going to speak on behalf of our planning team and say we'd love to have you if you have those connections to help make it happen.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
I just keep thinking about insurance companies, because they have so much at stake with reducing fiscal harm, because anyone who insures properly in the state of Maryland has a huge financial stake in fixing this problem before they're out money. So if we can encourage, the insurance industry to help us, I think that would be great.
And I also thought about power companies, because oftentimes when there is a national, like a natural disaster, massive power outages, you know, I mean, they play a role in the emergency response.
Yeah.
And as private companies, they have a lot of money.
Mhm.
So,
And I think maybe on the next eco meeting, I believe we have is it James? James still on the James Joyner? Was he one from the insurance side? I think he was going to speak to the group. Well, that's more so just from general updates. So I think we can probably bring that point up at that meeting as well. But and I'll make a note of that. So that's a great point, Jennifer. So let's see, I think we are good for this for now. I know that me, Amy, and Jared might have to talk again, possibly Jennifer as well. I don't know, before we submit these to the entire work group.
And I just want to reiterate that we do have another meeting before these recommendations are due. So the final eco meeting before that September 1st deadline is on Thursday, the 21st, at the same time as this meeting, 3 to 4:30. So we'll have one more chance to deliberate, vote before those recommendations have to be submitted on September 1st.
Right. And the hope is at that point, we'll more so just be fine tuning, hopefully, what we have. But like Jared said, we'll still have a chance to vote on it. We have a full meeting.
and
So-
we need to open up for public comment.
Yep, I was just going to say, before we end the meeting, we got to go ahead and do some public, open it up for public comment. So,
Yeah, Mr. Silva left just 5 seconds too early. He just left the meeting. I know he had
Oh.
something to say.
man.
He didn't send something in. I was waiting.
Well, he did send a link in the chat though, but
Okay.
I'm not sure. I haven't opened it up yet.
Well, we have to keep his, what he forwarded to us for, that was something completely different than this.
Yeah.
I have to keep it for the next meeting.
Yeah, I did read over it. That was pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
So yeah, I was very impressed with that. I had no clue. I mean, I looked at how much spent on gas versus that the electric vehicle. That was pretty incredible.
mhm.
Okay, so I guess there are no public comments this time. Want to make sure before we convene the meeting, not convene. Convene the meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, good. Well, we'll see everybody in about another month. If not before then, some of you might see you before then. And if you're having trips, vacations, please enjoy. Continue to enjoy your summer, and we'll see you all soon.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.